Howdy, friends.
How do you record on Zoom, Dean?
Hi, Shauna. Steve.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome. Well, we're gonna go ahead and get started, and we'll be admitting people as they come in as well. But welcome everyone to the Faculty Learning Institute's Wellness Workshop, Mental Health 101 for Educators, Managing the Overwhelm. I'm Sarah Bosler, Fly co-chair with Nicole Airy, and I'd like to introduce our facilitators for today. So Nikki Gorham is a licensed clinical social worker. She has over 13 years experience in providing mental health and behavioral intervention services using evidence-based practices to children, adults, and families. She is one of the founders of a group practice that offers counseling, consultation, presentation, and contract services for the K-12 school setting and institutes of higher education. Nicole Rabaudi is an associate marriage family therapist. She has over a decade of experience in intervention and social emotional learning. Nicole has worked with students of all ages and families in identifying best practices for mental health and learning. She has developed and implemented social emotional curriculum, counseled families, and is currently supporting students with learning differences and evaluations in addition to supporting their families. Welcome.
Thank you, Sarah, for the warm welcome. Once again, I'm Nikki Gorham, and I just want to start by welcoming you all to our wellness series hosted by the Faculty Learning Institute. I'd like to start by thanking Sarah Bosler and Nicole Ari, who have been working with my co-facilitator Nicole and I to develop and plan this series. I want to just say thank you to those who are in attendance today. Our goal is to enhance the culture of personal and collective wellness at your college. And just before we begin, I want to just inform you all that our time together is confidential. So anything that you say remains in this safe space. And we also ask that you keep what is shared by others confidential as well. And so before we delve into our presentation, I'd like to introduce Nikawana Shah. She's a faculty member from your college, and she's going to kindly lead us into a meditation practice. So please embrace the exercise. It is aimed to promote self-care, increase your attention, and enhance your ability to receive what is next.
So hi, everyone. I am showing you the slides. These will be in the resources that Nikki and Nicole have provided for you. So make sure that you stay on for the whole call. They'll be giving you a lot more resources besides this. But I just want you to know if you see something on the slide that makes you go, oh, that really was helpful for me. There are other tools that are included in the slide deck. We'll just be starting out with the first tool to talk about deep breathing. Right, so in this entire slide deck, you'll see a few different types of breathing that can help you to calm yourself during a stressful event, to teach you to quiet your mind if you need a mental sort of pick-me-up, and to slow down those bigger emotions before they boil over. And so the technique we're going to focus on as we start today is going to be 3-part breath or deep breathing. So wherever you are, however you're able to be, whether you're in an office, taking a break, or at home, get yourself as comfortable as possible. And I know that seems like a big statement, but think about what your body is telling you it needs right now. So if you need to adjust, to take your shoes off, if you have layers, you need to adjust those layers, whatever it is, so that you can spend the next hour with Nikki and Nicole fully present without distractions of the body not being taken care of. Excellent. So 3-part breath or deep breathing is the basic thing at its best. The process just requires us to do 2 simple things: to feel the sensations of the breath in the body. Really hard, right? And at the same time that we're feeling those sensations, be precise about the order that we fill and empty the body as we breathe. So whether you feel comfortable with your eyes open or closed to do this, that's fine. I invite you to close your eyes if you feel safe to do so. If you'd prefer to have your eyes open, that's fine as well. If you'd like to turn your camera off during this period, whatever is going to allow you to be able to focus on the sensations of your body without any outside physical or mental distractions. It's a lot of decisions up front, but it gets easier now. So I want you to consider that your torso is like a big glass of water. Well, most of the time when we breathe, we start at the top of the glass, and the top part of the glass is a very fast kind of breath. So just check in with your breath right now. And if you feel the chest moving, but the belly is still, or the shoulders rising as the breath comes in, you're breathing in that top part of the chest. Is that good or bad? It's not bad because you're breathing, which means you're winning at the living game, right? Yay, still alive. But we're using the shallowest part of a really big, deep glass. So you want to feel the breath. If it's here in the shoulders or in the upper part of the torso, first just relax the shoulders down. We don't have to carry the breath. The breath falls in and out of the body, just like waves at the beach. So allow the breath to move down into the ribs. And if you can feel the ribs opening and closing, we know that it's in the middle part of the glass. Again, this is the medium section of the lungs. The biggest part of the lungs are deep down in the belly. So breathe like you just ate Thanksgiving dinner. You want to feel the breath come in and feel that stretch of the waistband. So take off your mental skinny jeans, right? I want you to think that you're going to be the fluffiest gordita and gorditos out there. And let the belly get as big as possible. And we don't consider this, but as the body expands to let the breath in, it also expands to the rear, the ribs, like a big accordion open to the back and to the sides. So as we breathe, we actually breathe with all four sides of the torso. So just allow the breath to stretch the bottom part of that glass as it fills with air, then fill the ribs. And then lastly, the chest fills with air, but the shoulders relax down. And as we exhale, let the top part of the glass empty. Let the ribs come back together. And let the belly empty. And that's our process. Let's just try that without me talking at you. Feeling the breath coming into the belly. Stretching the ribs. Filling the chest. And emptying the top of the glass, the middle, and the bottom. Just a few more times. Let the belly get big. Let the ribs get wide. Let the chest fill, shoulders relaxing down. Chest, ribs, belly. And so again, I invite you to practice in whatever way is comfortable. If you need to adjust, to adjust. When you find that the mind gets distracted, so if you find that you have a little lost time during the presentation, come back to the breath. And come back to the sensation of the breath in the belly, in the ribs, and in the chest. And so I'd like to take a moment now to invite you into this experience. As you're breathing, I'll be reading statements intended as a call to action for your spirit. Feel free to accept them as is, to edit them, or replace them entirely with whatever arises that feels authentic to you today as you look to care for yourself. So these statements are invitations to allow you to fully arrive in this space, both physically and digitally, to get the most out of what Nikki and Nicole are providing so that you can invest this time in yourself. This investment of time may be intended to make your work easier, but more importantly, it is intended to protect your body from the stress that wears you down. So let's step into that world that allows you time to reflect on your priorities. A world that has enough time for you to nurture your body through both physical ritual and to feed your senses. A world that has enough time for you to rest your busy mind. And as you rest your busy mind, to be still. So I invite you to be fully present with as few distractions as your current privilege allows. So for the next bit of time we have together, be fully present to care for yourself so that you have the ability to choose how you care for others. To be fully present, to be at rest so that you may experience greater peace with the choices you make and the life before you. And let's be fully present to be fully able to use all of your intellect to meet the opportunities ahead of you. If you find that the mind has wandered, come back to the body. Feel the belly and the ribs and the chest as the wave of air comes into the body. And the exhale as the chest, the ribs, and the belly empty as the wave moves out. Allow the breath to roll in and out. Allow the movement of the waves to keep you present. Like a surfer, don't turn your back on the breath. Just like you don't turn your back on the wave. Stay here where opportunity lives, present with the life in front of you. I invite you to continue in 3-part breath. As we get to share the wisdom of Nikki and Nicole today, I'll be turning it over to Nicole now. Thank you for coming to take care of yourself today.
Thank you so much, Nikawana, for that amazing meditation. That was wonderful. We are so grateful that you're setting the tone for learning and self-care. This is such a good reminder to be present and open to new solutions and staying mindful in our approach to mental health today. Thank you so much. And thank you. And Nikki and I are honored to be here with you all. Thank you. I just want to quickly address the overall learning objective for today. Of course, they're in the, we're going to pull up our presentation. It's in the title. It's Mental Health 101 for Educators, Managing the Overwhelm. We know that all of you have gone above and beyond this year. You've pivoted, you've bended, you've listened, you've blurred the lines between home and work, not being there not only for your students and your community, but for your families in this incredibly stressful time. For some of us, the pandemic may have been the most stressful event we have experienced so far, but for others, it may have compounded life events that have already been occurring for you. Today, we want to help by increasing your awareness of mental health, by providing guidance through education, and uncovering practices to improve your mental health and overall well-being, in addition to creating this safe space where you can explore what mental health and self-care mean to you. We want to start this presentation by hearing from you. And you don't have to unmute unless you want to, but we just would invite you, if you feel moved, to put a word in the chat on what mental health means to you. It just could mean one word. It doesn't have to be a sentence. It could be calm. It could be stressed. It could be taking a walk, which is what the word I would use, because taking a walk was the thing that got me through the last year. So I just want to invite you to do that now, but I also want to invite you to do that throughout the presentation. We're not alone in this. I thank you for being here today, but the chances are whatever you're feeling, other people are feeling as well. And so I think it's just really going to help us all just to contribute, put it in the chat. I'm seeing self-care, relaxed, happiness, finding balance, peace, grounded. Thank you so much for contributing. Clarity, quiet. This is all so great. Thank you so much for contributing. And like I said, we want to maintain that active chat. This is a communal experience that we're having. Please jump in when you have a thought, a question. We are going to show you some slides. We're not going to try not to overwhelm you with information while we're talking about the overwhelm, but we're going to first start with a question. What is mental health? Mental health is a dimension of health that includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It has a profound impact on how we think, feel, and act towards ourselves and to others. It helps inform how we handle stress, how we relate to others, and how we make choices. Essentially, we can think of positive mental health with the question that we've all heard: how full is our tank to cope with life events, big and small? If it's empty and it feels prickly, the smallest challenge is going to feel huge. But when it's full, tackling everything becomes a little bit easier, and we're able to manage our stress and engage in that very important self-care that Nikki was, referring to. When we give ourselves the permission and capability to care for ourselves, our impact is going to be greater. I want to talk about what contributes to our poor outcomes in mental health. Biological factors such as genes or brain chemistry, life experiences such as trauma or a global pandemic, extreme stress, but also family history of mental health challenges. I think we've all seen this year what a prolonged stress event can do. If we were in the best of mental health before the pandemic, this year has certainly stretched us. If you were struggling before, this may have exacerbated, or new symptoms may have emerged. And I think it's safe to say that many of us have experienced a new symptom, whether it's a lack of sleep or new stressors that are coming on, just sort of like tension, anxiety that may have emerged this year that is unfamiliar to you. And we want to acknowledge too, we feel like this is an important element. Just because the pandemic is winding down does not mean that these feelings are going to disappear overnight. We all jolted into this new reality in March 2020, but forming new habits and patterns to emerge is going to take time to develop, in addition to managing the stress of the opening and the challenges that are coming with that. We know as educators and community members at a college, you have been there for your community. And so we want to invite you, as we think about emerging, to how you're going to care for yourselves too in that transition. So I also want to talk about stress and how it can manifest as a feeling, emotion, physical tension. Of course, it's your body's reaction to a challenge or demand. In short bursts, it can be positive. It gave us the motivation to wash our groceries and find toilet paper and make our own sanitizer. That was a stress event that sort of propelled us to do these things. But too much stress can make these little tasks seem like an overload. It could be the accumulation of many small hassles, and other times it's a major event or long-term challenges like we may be experiencing collectively now. And so that leads us to anxiety, which is your body's natural response to stress. Okay, anxiety is a mental and physical reaction to a perceived threat. Like I said, in small doses, these things can be helpful. They can propel us towards caring for ourselves and protect us from danger. And it focuses our attention on the challenges ahead of us. But when it becomes too severe, it can become debilitating. And that's what we're going to talk about more today. You may still be having fear or apprehension about what is to come, or you may still be feeling some residual stress from the last year. So this is when I'm going to ask us all to do a little self-check-in, which is a really important dimension to self-care. This can be done daily, weekly, or on a schedule that fits your lifestyle. Maybe it's just like 5 minutes in the morning or 2 minutes before you go to bed, but it's just that daily scan, self-scan of we know when we feel good physically, we can walk those extra few blocks with a friend, but it's also vital that we learn to see the emotional signposts in our life. So these are some of the things that through our research and conversation with clients and studies that have come out of ways that people are coping. Have you been sleeping too much or too little? Are you eating too much or too little? Are you isolating yourself from friends and family even when it's safe to see them? Have you used substances to feel better? Are you having trouble concentrating or remembering things? Are you having trouble relaxing or making decisions that you feel good about? There were so many rapid decisions that you all have been making this year, and I know your community is grateful, and I'm a parent, so I'm grateful to all the teachers. But how do we feel peace about all the decisions we've made that we had to make in an instant? This may cause us to feel anxious or full of worry, unable to concentrate, or overwhelmed. We may be experiencing some compassion fatigue. We've all had this exploding compassion for others and the world and our collective experience, but that can wear us down. And that can result in physical or emotional exhaustion as a result of helping for others and having that feeling for the experience of others. You could have experienced a shift in your worldview. The world doesn't feel so safe, or you're not trusting others to make good decisions that benefit your overall community. And you may have taken on the emotions of others that you were helping, such as sadness, anxiety, or avoidance. It can be very hard to keep up our emotional boundaries in a time such as this. And I also want to talk about tension. We all know sort of the obvious ways that manifest, such as like disrupted sleep or tense shoulders. But it can actually also, so this is when you're doing the self-check-in, it can also manifest itself as fatigue and irritability, having a little bit of a short fuse, feeling unfocused, and it may be moments we have during the day, and it may be momentary, and it comes and it goes, but feeling unfocused, racing thoughts, a problem with memory that can also occur, graying hair, dry skin, acne, or grinding teeth at night, or sweating or nausea. So I want to say, first of all, this is not an exhaustive list. the ways we manifest stress is individual to you and your experience, but it is vital to do that regular check-in and how you are feeling, both physically and emotionally. And I understand, Nikki, we all get it. Sometimes it's not possible to do on a regular basis. But you have so many balls in the air. I know that, but it's important to set aside time to potentially do this daily. This is where I like Nick Awana's meditation practice. I think it could really help us set that time aside to flex that muscle. As I said, we recommend just even a few minutes a day where you take action for yourself. And we want to emphasize that we are collectively experiencing this moment. You're not alone. Nikki is going to provide us with some context on some recent studies.
Yeah, so thank you, Nicole. So recent findings from the American Psychological Association Stress in America survey that was conducted in February of 2021 revealed that we are currently a nation trying to work through collective trauma, and further highlighted that the extended period of elevated stress during the pandemic led people to engage in maladaptive coping behaviors. As you can see, like the survey responses revealed that 84% of adults reported feeling at least one emotion associated with prolonged stress, be it anxiety, sadness, anger, or depression. And it also revealed that many adults are struggling to cope and have adopted unhealthy coping behaviors. Excuse me. For example, undesired weight changes, excuse me, 42% have gained weight, well, of the respondents, and 18% lost weight. And just to keep in mind that this is like undesired. Also, there was changes in sleeping patterns were highlighted. So 2 in 3 Americans reported increased or decreased sleep since the pandemic started. There was also reports of greater alcohol consumption. So nearly 1 in 4 adults are drinking more alcohol to cope with their stress during the pandemic. And lastly, decreased exercise and activity. And 54% of adults have been less physically active than they wanted to during the pandemic. Excuse me. So just living through the uncertainty of the pandemic forced a lot of people to accept unwanted changes. For you all as professionals in higher education, many of you were suddenly charged with the increased work and learning load. You had to adopt new delivery modes and remake classes into effective digital form. I've had conversations with educators who have spent countless hours just trying to implement the changes. And like one common theme that was echoed was just the difficulty experienced in finding a balance between work demands and personal life. These abrupt changes from the work setting happened simultaneously with the realities of the virus, isolation, loss, and just was a huge onset to stress for many. So at this time, I wanted to just open it up. So, and if you want to share 1 or 2 words to describe how you experienced the transition, it would be a good time. You can use the chat feature or even unmute yourself. Okay. Yeah. I see the abrupt change. Yeah, it was very fast. And yeah, it was frustrating, unpredictable. These are great words. The theme for today has been my feeling for much of this year, overwhelmed. Yeah, we still are experiencing the overwhelm. Yeah. Thank you all. So thank you for sharing. I'm gonna shift gears. We're gonna talk about prevention. Like you guys have shared, and I appreciate the feedback. And we're gonna talk through how to navigate and what focus on what you can do that is in your control. So when we talk about prevention, we aim to stop or reduce the impact of mental health challenges before they occur and promote mental health wellness for all. With our physical health, we are taught to seek out medical care, engage in preventive strategies such as scheduling regular doctor visits, exercising, or eating healthy. However, with mental wellness, there's not a huge emphasis on prevention always. Effective ways to engage in prevention, usually they can include regular self-care, feeling comfortable enough to rely on social supports for help, and advocating for your needs within systems such as school, work, and relationships. Investing in our mental wellness the way we invest in our physical wellness can really prepare us to cope with times of crisis and stress. As educators, it's easy to get consumed in caring for others and your students, your communities, and your families. However, sometimes you have to step back and just kind of redirect the attention to self. Just like I'm sure many of you have traveled and have heard the analogy used, like if you that you need to put on your own mask before you assist others. So in order to care for anyone or anything else, you must start with taking care of yourself first. And for today, the purpose of today, we're going to really focus on self-care and what it means. So on this slide, it states that self-care is defined as the act of doing good for your own mind, your own body and soul. It is the practice of taking action to preserve one's own health. It's unique and specific to each person's individual needs. For many, it's not something that you just know. You have to, for many, it's a journey that you grow into. And it's about learning to be intentional and actively choosing to do and incorporate specific practices into your life. And it requires like you to readjust and grow as times change. I'm sorry, excuse me. I'm sorry. So positive practices allow for people to be able to realize their full potential, to cope with the stresses of life, to work productively, and to make meaningful contributions to communities. I'm going to shift. Excuse me. It's really at the core of being able to live life fully. And to get a little deeper, I'm going to take some time to just talk about ways to maintain positive mental health, and uncover what positive self-care practices and healthy coping looks like. So what we have first on the slide is collaborate. So collaboration is just really to build partnerships to support not only your academic and professional needs, but also to support each other. In the work setting, it can look like delegating tasks, asking a colleague for feedback on a project, and just being able to share and communicate and be in community with others. Giving yourself a break is another way to maintain positive mental health, and that can look like you just accepting when things are just good enough instead of aiming for perfection. It also can look like disconnecting. As educators, your work is never ending, and you have to sometimes just carve out times and set hours and even take small breaks throughout your day. Regrouping does wonders. Another way to maintain is just kind of reevaluating your habits, like assessing what serves you and what does not. And once you become clear of what serves you, you can actively choose what habits you want to incorporate into your life and commit to doing something good for yourself daily. And that could look like, yoga or stretching or meditation or taking a walk, but it really focuses on identifying what the need is in the moment. Diversions include activities such as, art or drawing or just really tapping into maybe some old interests and finding out, is this something that brings you satisfaction? Just being able to shift gears, right? Just those are diversions that are often, engaged in and practiced. Social and interpersonal coping looks like being able to talk to someone you trust or spend time with friends or family. It also, means that you learn to set boundaries and say no sometimes. Writing a note to someone you care about, being assertive, using humor, or even serving someone in need. Those all fit under like social and interpersonal coping. Cognitive coping can look like keeping an inspirational quote with you, using it as a tool to help encourage you. It also encompasses like being flexible, writing a list of goals, rewarding yourself when you're successful, and writing a list of strengths. Engaging in stress relievers, such it can include just exercising or laughing, watching comedy, like crying. Sometimes that's needed to just as a source to just relieve stress. Essential oils are commonly used as a way to kind of just reduce stress. Engaging in catharsis, for example, like going to the bathroom and screaming or punching a punching bag or screaming at a pillow. Those are things that are done that can support mental wellness as well. Tending to your physical promotes wellness. So making sure that you're getting enough sleep, eating healthy, and having a routine. That those are things to promote wellness. And in regards to spirituality, practicing prayer or meditation, attending church, or even being in nature are all things that can be done. Limit setting, this is a big one. Sometimes you have to set limits with yourself and take out the things that are not productive and that don't serve you. And it can involve like dropping some involvement or some commitment and just really prioritizing important tasks and relationships. And lastly, accessing resources through your school. As an employee, like employee insurance is a way to get connected to wellness programs, therapy, and other behavioral health services. Nicole and I will provide a list of resources at the end of our presentation to kind of guide you in that direction as well. So I'm curious, I want to know like one way that you coped or practiced self-care over the pandemic. Would anybody like to share that by unmuting themselves or putting it in the chat?
I'll unmute myself. I think connecting with friends, talking with friends, it was I have 3 kids and I was with them all 24 hours. So, probably pre-pandemic, it would have been to be with my family, but I needed the opposite.
That's huge. So you kind of set limits and prioritize time with people, and it didn't, in order
just
to
connecting.
Yeah, connect. Thank you. I see taking daily walks. Sent my letter of retirement. That's congratulations. Took a break from social media. Turned off the news. These are all big things. It sounds like there was some good practices utilized.
Yeah, these are helpful for all of us.
Yeah.
I like the dug up a lot of tree branches. I would like to know more about that. That sounds incredible and physical and sort of touches on a lot of things we're talking about. Oh, planted trees. So you're like giving new life.
Yeah, that's great.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. It was a good
I have
time.
pictures to prove it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing.
So now we're going to thank you, Nikki, for all of that. It's so important to sort of consider these things, in our life right now. And now we want to talk a little bit about resilience. What is resilience? Our ability to withstand or recover quickly from difficult conditions, which I believe from reading everything you guys have written in the chat, you have done extremely well. But, there's ways to build our resilience on a daily basis. And the great thing about resilience is you don't have to be only building it when you're under stress. you can be building it when you're in a good space. You can sort of be learning these methods to boost yourself, and then those reserves. So when you are depleted, you can go to those reserves to get through a challenging moment. And so the first thing we want you to consider is just building up your confidence. And even if you're a confident person, it just means like writing a list of what you're good at, both big and small. You know, there's nothing too small to feel proud of. Like I like that, digging up the tree branches. You know, I'm a great partner for walking. I make a great cup of tea. This is the time to pat yourself on the back and remind yourself of your valuable contributions to your community. I think one of the things that we've learned this year is that there's nothing too small that we can do for ourselves and for others. And often they're the same thing. So, reward yourself by acknowledging those moments where, you're really contributing. Accepting compliments when they are given to you, we feel is really important. A lot of times we feel pressured to sort of return a compliment or say something to cover it up. And a perfectly wonderful answer is to say thank you and receive that goodwill that is coming to you. This increases those feel-good chemicals, and it can shift your mood very quickly. This year, we've all learned, different acts of like giving and receiving, and we just want to give ourselves permission to receive that goodwill and that moment from others. And that really goes into giving support to others when needed and accepting support from others. We are in a symbiotic relationship, in a collective experience of stress that we're having in our world, that we're emerging slowly from. And we want to acknowledge that. So sometimes our needs are greater and we need someone to extend that hand. And sometimes when our tanks are full, we can give that hand to somebody else. And I think, and also I want to encourage all of us to ask for support when we need it. And, even if it's just, I need support in this right now. And that sort of ties back into the collaboration that Nikki was talking about. How can we collaborate on our physical needs, or, working out, exercising, drinking tea? How can we collaborate on, the sources of strength that we all need? And then the other one we thought about was creating and sticking to a realistic budget. I know we've all not been to a store in a year and a half, and retail therapy is wonderful. But it's sort of a way to manage our lifestyle when we're living in uncertainty. It's just another dimension that we can think about as professionals and providers. And the next one, volunteering in your community. Again, ignite those feel-good chemicals. A very small act can have a huge impact on others. It could just be, and volunteering doesn't mean always you sign up. It just could mean you carry a bag of groceries, you give somebody some cookies. It could be a very small act that boosts the feelings and support of somebody else. Finding ways to manage your stress, walking, running, the different things that Nikki was talking about. But be creative, texting a friend, eating a chocolate bar every Sunday. I mean, they're all great examples of how you manage stress. Buying yourself fresh flowers, or, documenting those tree branches and sharing it with somebody, that's a way to manage your stress, to be in communication with others, to feel proud of what you've done. I mean, these are all great ways to build that up. Sharing the burdens with others. I like the saying, which has popped up especially this year, about that we all may be riding in the same storm, but we're in different boats. So we're all coming from different places, but when we share a burden, we can receive or provide a new perspective, which can really act as that mood shift and thought shift that we need, or we can provide that for somebody else. Identify and address your shifting moods. That's the regular check-ins we're talking about, and finding a schedule that works for you. And we sort of keep saying it because we feel like it's so important, that self-scan, even if it's just a few minutes before bed or waking up. Consistent check-in can provide that reminder that you matter and your mental health and self-care is important. And learning to be at peace with yourself. Finding peace in those evolving shifting moods. You know, a feeling will come in, let it come in and let it pass. And that's really going to promote the mindfulness to accept changes as we continue to navigate this new reality, and learning to be at peace with yourself and saying, this is how I feel now, it's temporary, it's going to go, is really a gift to yourself. And then we want to show you this great graphic we found, the sources of strength. And the one thing I wanted to say, both of us wanted to say about this, is that I think one of the important lessons we've all learned is, are you an extrovert or an introvert? Are you seeking connection with others when you do the self-care? Or are you do you need that downtime alone? And we want to say that's also like an important thing to acknowledge when you're looking at the sources of strength, because some of them are very clear, positive friends, family support, but you know, some of them may be less clear, like spirituality. Do you want to go to, you know, service with a friend? Do you want to go on a hike with a friend? Is it more important that you do it alone? So I think that's an important dimension to consider when we're looking at the sources of strength.
Yeah, that and also just take the time, excuse me, right now to look at the areas and look at where your strengths lie. Maybe you can identify 2 parts that you really feel strong in, and 1 area that you want to enhance or grow. You know, just what we know is that, again, knowing your strengths can allow you to kind of get through difficult times. And you know, if there's areas that you want to build, then, you know, taking the steps to do that.
Yeah, and I think while we're looking at this, you know, we can ask ourselves, do any of these areas actually impact your strength? Are any of these areas not a source of strength for you? Or how are they impacting your health? How are they impacting your performance? Is there a spoke of this wheel that's off balance for you? Are they bigger? Maybe one of your slices is bigger than another one, and it's kind of causing it to shift. Since you're all working at oh yes. Oh, I see somebody's raised their hand.
You can finish. I'm not trying to interrupt.
Oh, no. Go ahead. I want everyone we want everyone to jump in and contribute.
I just have a question, I guess, and maybe you're going to get there, but I feel like in the last year, and we see this especially on social media, that people have, you know, really kind of used the opportunity to refocus on hobbies or things they want to learn or do that they don't get to do normally, like learn to play an instrument or learn a language or bake sourdough bread. Like that's, you know, and I feel that I've done that. I've dabbled in a lot of different things over the last year that I enjoy and that are a stress relief. But I'm finding that I got to the point, especially when the semester started again, you know, most of that stuff happened over the summer when things were a little easier. But then I feel like almost overwhelmed and disappointed that I can't maintain my hobbies. So like, how is it that we can kind of find that balance with this long list of things we want to do and we're inspired by and feel that could help us manage our stress and self-care, but then there's this reality of time, and I don't even have kids, so I don't know how others do it, but I don't know. That's just what I'm thinking about right now. Like all of these things sound great, and there are so many different ways we can approach them, but how do we balance that with the reality of time and work and, you know, energy even?
I would agree with you completely. You know, it did feel like at some point in the pandemic, there was a lot of time, right? You just had, because you were home all the time and there was no car, you know, there was no traffic, there was nothing like that. And so we did have all these wonderful things. And I myself have sort of lost touch with some of the things I was doing. So I definitely understand. And the advice, I know I'm curious what Nikki will say too, or others, is that I think the important thing is to sort of connect with what was feeding you in that activity. Was it the connection? Was it that you were playing music? Was it a movement? And finding a way to incorporate that into your life as it exists now. So if it was, baking the bread, which I never got into because I'm a terrible baker, but if we do that once a week, or, Sunday dinner, I bake the bread. It's not you're not experimenting, you have time to experiment with the bread, different kinds of sourdough, but maybe it's one loaf a week. Or, I think that it's important, and there is a loss associated with this time, which I want to acknowledge also, because we're losing the habits that mindful and strengthening habits we did create during that time. And it does feel like they're sort of being ripped away with the reopening. So I think that, yes, I think that's wonderful. Like better boundaries between work and off time. Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I'm wondering what you think.
Thank you.
I agree. So boundaries and carving out, well, setting limits too. I mean, we kind of talked about it before, so that speaks to the boundaries, but being able to, be realistic and acknowledging it. So it sounds like that's your starting point. You know that things are going to change and they're going to constantly look different, but finding a harmony. So, and knowing what you have the capacity to do. And maybe sometimes you'll have more time and other times you'll have less time. But I think as long as you incorporate wellness practices, that, is going to, that's the main thing. So maintaining some sense of self-care on a regular basis, and maybe you'll have more time on the front end and then it scales down over time, but just having some practice established.
And I also want to say, I think we should acknowledge that loss. I think a big lesson we've learned this year is that we need to sort of acknowledge what's happened, and we need validation. And so acknowledging that, that times are shifting, but our responsibilities aren't necessarily shifting. They may be increasing actually as employers and significant others and children expect us to pivot very quickly back. There's going to be, there's going to be stress involved in that, for sure. And in our resources, we included some articles on that, because I think there's some brilliantly written pieces on what we're feeling right now. And one that I read that resonated with me, I wonder if anybody else, it was named the feeling languishing. Sort of like what's happening, sort of we're wondering what's going on, but that's really, why we want to provide these resources for you all. Oh yeah, the languishing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a comment that says, I feel frustrated that I am not able to get enough done in the time that I am working. I have to stop at some point because I run out of energy. But I need to figure out better boundaries. Yeah, boundaries are huge. And also, again, being okay with what you're able to do in that time frame. That's huge. So sometimes it means lessening, having less, producing less. We have expectations, but we may not always meet them. And sometimes it requires you to lower expectations, because the reality is, there are a lot of demands that are just happening. And, we are in a pandemic and there's a lot of, a lot going on. So self-care is first, tending to yourself if you're able to, and being comfortable with what you're able to do, accepting it, I guess. Yeah.
And that's also where that peace, being at peace with yourself comes in. Mm-hmm. That, we need to set that boundary for ourselves. Yes, you're right. It's very American. You're right. We work. We get 2 weeks a year, but it's sort of like we need to set the boundary and then let people know what the boundary is. And then it's a habit. It's a muscle to flex the boundary. It's something that we have to work on. It doesn't come to us naturally. We may not have been taught those, to have those resources and reserves. And so I feel like working on that, communicating, it's difficult to find the balance. You're also dedicated. I acknowledge you, and I'm so grateful that you're there for your community. And it is exhausting just because we're at home and we're able to rest when we, feel we need to. It's actually, maybe you're doing less self-care because you're not walking away from a desk at work. So we want to emphasize those patterns, those routines. I love that you're all having this conversation. I wonder if we can, there's the expectations we put on ourselves, which are pretty huge. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to perform better and better and better and better, which is not really realistic. So how can what are solutions? What do you, does anyone have thoughts on, like, what are your personal solutions? What boundaries can we set for time, for personal time, personal space?
I'll share an idea that I have about how I've tried to set a boundary. Sometimes I just have to like sign myself up for something that takes me out of my workspace, that forces me to have a container to physically separate it and time separate it for like yoga or meditation or just a walk or something, but somewhere that I have to be at a certain time is something that personally helps me, where other people are meeting me there or someone's expecting me there or something like that. So, and I have to force myself away because the work definitely never ends.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I see comments. Yeah, I think it's great, Sarah, that you actually remove yourself physically, because sometimes it does require that that type of separation. Even having a designated space. I know that some people are still working from home and others may be on campus, but just having an area that's limited to that, like that's your work area alone, that kind of helps to facilitate or have a better separation between work and personal. I see something, when I leave work at a normal time, I feel guilty, like I'm not doing enough. Yeah, and I think that there was a comment about just changing thinking patterns, and that's kind of when you have to give yourself permission to be okay with it, and allow yourself to allow yourself to to understand that what you did is what you were capable of in that time frame. Nicole, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I like what you're saying. It is hard to not feel that way. It is hard to it's easy to say, oh, step away from the computer, step away from work. And it's a lot harder to develop that habit. And I do want to acknowledge that because it's hard for me too. We all have our phones. We can answer an email or answer a phone call at any time of the day or night. And, it's that same advice, put it away, have your charging station, don't look at it after a certain time, mute your emails, just setting up.
Yeah.
I want to encourage everyone this week to set up one new boundary, whether that's I'm not answering emails after this certain time. And also your community will get accustomed to the boundary you set. So communicating the boundary, they will, you're all working so hard, you're all incredible there for your students and your community. But when we set that boundary, we're sort of telling others what our limit is. And, is something reasonable to your job. And, I'm not answering emails between 6 and 9 p.m. I'll check it at 9 and then that's it. Or I check my emails at 6 in the morning if you're a morning person. So I don't look at my email from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Something that's going to really work for your life. We definitely don't want to impose anything or ask anything unrealistic, but just one, I'm going to say homework is like one new boundary, and finding,
Yeah, that's
right?
good.
It's not easy.
Yeah,
And
I like that. And also, oh, I'm sorry. Just,
Okay.
I wanted to just jump in and say one thing. Just assessing whether there's a sense of urgency associated with what you feel, like what you receive as far as work goes. Because sometimes, you know, we feel that we need to, we put the pressure, we impose the pressure on ourselves, and it may not be as urgent as it feels. So asking yourself, you know, is this something, like ranking the priority of the task, and figuring out like if that's you know, like how much, if you have a little room, right, can be a good tool too, just to kind of help you, you know, navigate through different tasks and
And
set
also,
boundaries.
I
Yeah.
want to say too, you know, combine the boundary with self-care. So, you know, set the boundary, plan to set the boundary, and then eat a piece of chocolate or sort of like you want to reward yourself for setting that boundary, or go for a walk, whatever, or bake the bread, whatever is your personal source of strength, or call a friend and tell them, wow, I set this boundary. I'm, you know, this is my plan. You know, sharing your plans with others can be really powerful. We want to quickly share, I shared the document, which is please list your personal sources of strength, and we will send that out. And then I also want to quickly share our resources that we have collected for you. We have our top 5 recommendations, and then we have tons of other ones. Some are free, a lot of them are free, some have a subscription period. And Nikawana's, she generously provided some of her resources for us, her meditation that she offered. This can be your boundary. This can be your self-care moment. Tell your family, I do this every day at 7 a.m. for 10 minutes. So, may not be so easy, but this is what we're encouraging, and we definitely understand. Thank you, everyone, for sharing with us.
Yes,
We really,
thank you.
yeah, we're grateful to be here and for sharing of yourselves. We really appreciate that.
And before we end, I did put a link to our evaluation survey in the chat. So if you get a chance, you know, at the end of the session today, if you can just give us your feedback. And we are really looking forward to a follow-up session to this next Friday, right? Already next Friday. And hopefully we'll be able to continue that in the fall as well. Is there anything else that anyone wanted to share before we close? Lots of thank yous in the chat. We really appreciate your time and effort in meeting with, sharing your information with us today.
I just wanted to quickly mention what was next week. Next week at the same time, we'll be talking about a few things, but we're also talking about adjusting expectations and striking balance, managing work and family. So it's kind of what we're talking, it's sort of what this conversation evolved into, expectations of ourselves and expectations of others, and how do we strike that balance. So we hope you join us next week. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Have a great weekend.